Is there anyone who's not ready? I guess I'm gonna start.
We advocate for targeted killing to be moved to more responsible, more transparent, more sovereign, respecting Department of Defense from the Central Intelligence Agency to apply type mechanisms. We believe this solves for self-power because Dow says unilateralism is sovereign to kill any cooperation with Nye and Thayer describe, which Nye and Thayer describe as that which prevents regional structural violence to the form of war from erupting everywhere. In this sense, we saw for many of the harms described by the K, but beyond that, and more importantly, we saw the human rights abuses of the status quo by forcing the indiscriminate bombings of the CIA due to the heightened transparency and more rigorous legal examinations of the DoD. They simply stand up very late and you will say, well, the DoD and the CIA are the same, but our solvency evidence is specific as to what structures are in place that make the DoD a lot more rigorous and a lot more transparent and thereby a lot more rights respecting because human rights organizations are able to criticize our policy more easily than the CIA. They have said throughout the day that we use neoliberal racist mechanisms to colonize us, but first of all, they've conceded from the get-go that drone strikes will continue regardless. The standardization of violence will continue regardless. Then it's only a matter of the inroads we can make against other inequalities and how we can use the structure to better accommodate for those who are oppressed and for those who are otherwise unaccounted for. Furthermore, our evidence on speaking the political, which my partner carried over the 1 hour, explains that if we were to disengage from the state just because its mechanisms happen to be ugly and they will be ugly in the status quo, then we yield space within the state to more harmful actors who are more negative and seek to harm more. So we need to take all the ground we can within the state, and yeah, though it is not perfect, our critical perspective on it and our attempt to make the policy better for drone strikes, which will be inevitable, is much better than the alternative, which is us vacating and leaving room for much more negative actors. They say we can't talk about human rights because they have racist origins, but they speak of some phantom piece of evidence that they never actually read. The one card they offered was power tag. The card said that there's anti-Semitism in modern Europe and there are human rights in modern Europe, therefore human rights don't actually work. They never read any of the evidence, and we gave other responses to try to counter their points at a point where they don't answer our arguments, how explaining that though there might be historical truth to the fact that human rights are racist, our app represents human rights working for non-white bodies to the point where our app represents the U.S. shifting to a sovereign respecting norm where we can't go in countries without their permission and we kill them less indiscriminately. So in this specific context, despite whatever historical context human rights might have originated from, human rights are very much working against the colonizing structures. We are literally vacating a former colonial space like Pakistan and giving the Pakistanis and their representative government more of a say in the activity that we do there. They can call this whitewashing, but their argument is very unnuanced and they never try to make more nuanced answer. They repeatedly said, now on to the roll of ballot. Okay, so our role about is one of taking a stance against the violence and politics of exposing the practices of the state that standardize and permit violence to occur. They've conceded they're not a form of state action and cross-sex. That means all of our arguments about why state involvement is good function is both the advantage of the plan and a disadvantage of the alternative. As we're close to this discussion of specific policy, the important thing is a great time to get substance about government will be actually examined in depth and allows us to reclaim our agency by imagining how we would change the state. At the point where they're arguing that the state is the actor that enacts violence on the black body and other bodies, this ability to produce change to the state is uniquely important. Boggs says that abandoning political action allows things like war, slavery, and authoritarian action to continue. By ignoring the creator of oppression, we lose our ability to change it. They propose no alternative methodology for actually addressing state violence, which means that you should resort to specificity 1AC if you buy that structural violence is the biggest impact around, and in the status quo, it will continue and be worse, something they conceded with our drones and inevitability evidence. We have specific methodology for breaking down the oppression that the government visits on the people of color abroad. They don't articulate in any way how the alternative serves as a breakdown of structural violence. You're going to have a hard time voting against this point because we're doing a lot more work on how we actually solve structural violence. And though we recognize that we are not the silver bullet, we are a method of engaging the state rich with solvency that actually manages to make real change. And their argument is fundamentally inconsistent. They say that white people can't understand racism, so we have no place. We simply have to look in the mirror and realize that we're white. I don't know what that looks like in a 1AC, and that's where they start criticizing our plan. And then at the same time, they say that we must engage. So this answers back their arguments about the floating thing.
And the sequencing.
And the sequencing.
If white people can never understand the racism, then no sequencing happens.
Right. Yeah, so if white people they have a very inconsistent story on solvency. They once say that we can never understand racism, and we can see that in the original cross-section. They say, have you ever experienced racism? We say, no, we recognize that we don't have a place in breaking that down necessarily, but that doesn't mean that you should vote against the app, and I'll explain why in a second.
What?
They're blind spot argument. They make an argument out of the 1 and C. We can see that we can't understand racism in the speech. Whenever we look at racism, we can't solve the structural violence at all. All we can do according to the negative is listen. We've done that. Now we should probably do what we can. We have to eliminate the form of structural violence that we would otherwise perpetuate. That blind spot argument is a link of omission dressed up. They say that we ignore racist underpinnings in Western society. That's just another way of saying that we should have to mention every form of structural violence. We've articulated throughout this round. We challenge the state by breaking down speedy politics, critiquing its violation of human rights, and refusing to engage in violent polarity that's forcing us on racism. Right. Don't let them go for a floating pig that's new in the 2NR and barely like it's certainly not in the 1NC, but very important to understand. Their whole claim about why you should vote against the app is they offer a series of links all dealing with the military-industrial complex and neoliberalism, but these are not links to the plan. These are links to the status quo, and we repeatedly demonstrated with no response from the negative as to how, though that is true, the status quo will continue in large part inevitably. We can only, as defense intellectuals, engage when we can and try to break it down. At the point where our app is not specifically bad in contrast to the status quo, that gives you no reason, and you grant us the full weight of our advantages in voting. There's no competition. They said they didn't articulate the purpose of test competition. They never demonstrated the competition, which is why you can't vote today.